Okay, it is 6 o'clock Israel time. I believe that it's time for me to begin this shiur. So it's close to the end of our fast. For those of you who are in America, it's the beginning, or close to the beginning of your fast. I've spent several Shiva Asar BeTamuz commemorations in Deal. I assume some of you are in Deal. Some of you, I assume, are in New York and other places. I see some people here also from Yerushalayim. So everybody, welcome to this shiur. We're going to talk about Yeshayahu's dialogue with the book of Eikha. And of course, Eikha is the upcoming book that we'll be reading on Tisha B'Av. Eikha is a book of suffering. Eikha is filled with enormous pain, with terrible bewilderment and despair and outrage, and it offers very, very little by way of consolation. Right? I think we've spoken about this before. For those of you who have attended some of my deal shiurim on Shiva Asar BeTamuz, Eikha has the word nechama 6 times in it, and every time it's in the negative. Ein li menachem, ein menachem li. I have no consoler. I have no one to comfort me. Eikha ends with a sigh of despair, in which Am Yisrael turned to God with the words, Ki im ma'os me'astanu katzafta aleinu ad me'od. You have surely rejected us. You have been very wrathful with us. It's a very difficult book. It's not a book that leaves us with a lot of consolation. But what is consoling is the fact that Eikha does not exist in a vacuum. Eikha is part of the broader canon of literature, of biblical books known as the Tanach, and these books are in constant dialogue with one another. We are not meant to read the book of Eikha as if it exists on its own. It's part of the 24 books of Tanach. And from the Tanach's perspective, and I think this already offers us a tremendous amount of consolation, from the Tanach's perspective, Eikha is not the end of the biblical story. Now, it may very well have been that the end of the biblical story and the end of the story of Am Yisrael is the destruction of Yerushalayim and the fall of the Davidic dynasty and the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and the exile to Bavel, but that is not the case. It's not the case for the Jewish people, thank God, as we well know, and it's also not the case in the Bible. It's not the case in the Tanakh. Exile is not the end of the Tanakh. Shivat Zion follows Galut, and rebuilding follows destruction. We did not end Tanakh with the book of Eikha. We have the books of Ezra and Nehemiah and Chagai and Zechariah and Malachi. And so we know that the Tanakh has its eye on rebuilding. This has enormous repercussions for the ability of Am Yisrael to survive and endure the exile and their difficulties throughout the generations, because what this already teaches us is that catastrophe, Am Yisrael's catastrophe, their exile, is not the end. It is one stage in Jewish history. And what I want to show you in this shiur is that the book of Yeshayahu, and particularly the Pirkei Nechama, the chapters of consolation, many of which we read as haftarot between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah. Those are the Sheva Dinechemta, right? The 7 haftarot of consolation. These Pirkei Nechama, which describe the return to the land of Israel following the exile to Bavel, these chapters dialogue the book of Eikha. They provide consolation. Where consolation is absent in the book of Eikha, they provide us with some kind of tikkun, with some kind of message that Eikha is going to have some sort of resolution, a correction of the terrible situation. We already see that Yeshayahu has its eye on correcting the book of Eikha. Now, the first ones to note this, of course, are Chazal, right? And we have this wonderful midrash in Eikha Rabbah. It's a very long midrash. I only brought for you a small portion of it, but what the midrash is trying to do is to show us that the chapters in Yeshayahu are in fact dialoguing with the book of Eikha and providing hope for a book which provides very little hope. So let's look, for example, what they do. We'll start here in source number 1 in Eikha Rabbah, where it says, Yirmiyahu Amar Ba'ot Tivke Valayla. Yirmiyahu said, She Yerushalayim surely cries in the night. And Yeshayahu Amar Ba'chol Lo Tivke. She will not cry. Yirmiyahu Amar Darchei Tzion Avelot. The paths to Tzion are mourning, right? There's nobody on the roads to Yerushalayim, the roads which were once so filled with people. Midli ba'ei moed. They are not coming for the holidays. Yeshayahu Amar Kol Korei Bamidbar Panu Derech Hashem. There is a voice that is calling out, clear the path for God to return to Yerushalayim. So no longer are the paths that lead to Yerushalayim empty of people who are coming on those paths. God is now clearing the path to prepare the people for return. Yirmiyahu Amar, and all of these Yirmiyahu Amars are psukim from Eikha, because of course we have a tradition that Yirmiyahu wrote the book of Eikha. Yirmiyahu Amar Chet Chata'a Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has surely sinned. Yeshayahu Amar Machiti Ka'av Pisha'echa. I've erased your sins. Yirmiyahu Amar Persat Tzion B'adeha Ein Menachem La. Yirmiyahu said, Tzion reaches out, she stretches out her hands, and there is no one to console her. Yeshayahu Amar Anochi Anochi U'menachem. I am your consoler. So that what this midrash points out is that even when Eikha leaves us with little to no hope, when it is read alongside the book of Yeshayahu, especially those prakim in Yeshayahu that describe the return from the exile in Babel, it becomes very clear that Eikha's dismal situation does not linger in some sort of vacuum with no hope for a future, with no hope for a cure, but that the hope is built into the prophecies of Yeshayahu. If Eikha provides no consolation, Yeshayahu provides all of the rectification for that lack of consolation in the book of Eikha. And so really what I want to begin by saying is that this shiur is really the groundwork for this shiur is laid by Chazal. They pointed me in the direction of comparing the book of Eikha to Yeshayahu, and in searching for the way in which Yeshayahu provides hope for Eikha's despondency. I'll maybe just really begin with the final psukim of Megillat Eikha. Many of us feel that Eikha leaves us with some kind of hope, because at the very end of the reading of the book of Eikha, we repeat the phrase Hashivenu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, which is of course the second to last pasuk of the book of Eikha, which is a hopeful pasuk. But what we sometimes forget is that Eikha really ends with no hope, right? If you look here, I see that there are some of you who are sending me chats. I'm going to leave the questions for the end. But if you look here at these final psukim of the book of Eikha, look at what it says here in pasuk Kaf. Lama lanetzach tishkachenu ta'azvenu le'orech yamim. Why, God, will you forget us for eternity? Will you forsake us for the end of days? And then the final pasuk, as I cited before, Ki im ma'os me'astanu, for you have surely rejected us. Katzafta aleinu ad me'od. You are exceedingly wroth with us. You are exceedingly angry at us. Look at what Yeshayahu does with these two verbs, tishkachenu and ta'azvenu. Yeshayahu brings a very powerful passage in Perek Memtet, where he has Tzion, namely Yerushalayim, speaking about God and saying, Vatomer Tzion, Azavani Hashem, Va'adonai shchechani. God has indeed forsaken me. He has indeed forgotten me. This recalls the end of Eikha. But Yeshayahu goes on and has God say to the people, Hatishkach Isha Ula? Can a woman forget her child? Merachem ben bitna? Can she cease to be compassionate with the fruit of her womb? Gam ele tishkachna. Even if they would forget, the Anochi, says God, I lo eshkachech. I will not forget. And so here Eikha seems to be responding to this end of, Yeshayahu seems to be responding to this end of the book of Eikha, which leaves us with a sense that the people perhaps are confused or despondent over the possibility that God will have forgotten them and forsaken them. And Yeshayahu says unequivocally, God will never forsake his people. Just as a woman will never forsake her child, and even more so than a woman who will never forsake her child, God will never forget Am Yisrael, God will never forget Yerushalayim, and God will never forsake Yerushalayim. In terms of these words, these really, this last pasuk of Eikha, Ki im ma'os me'astanu, for you, God, have surely rejected us. Look at what Yeshayahu says in Yeshayahu Perek Mem Aleph. Ve'omar lecha avdi ata, and I say to you, you are my servant. Becharticha ve'lo me'asticha. I have chosen you. I have not rejected you. So, when you look at Yeshayahu in its own right, it's saying something very beautiful. But when you look at Yeshayahu in juxtaposition to Megillat Eikha, in some sort of dialogue with Megillat Eikha, it's something else. It is Yeshayahu responding to Am Yisrael's final sigh of despondency at the end of the book of Eikha, where Yeshayahu rejects Am Yisrael's claim that God has surely rejected us. And so what we see here are several kind of small, but I think significant linguistic examples of the kind of dialoguing that's going on between Sefer Yeshayahu and Megillat Eikha. But I don't just want to speak about the finer linguistic points in which Yeshayahu seems to be reversing Eikha. I want to talk about something a little bit broader. I want to talk about themes. I want to examine some of the themes in Eikha, all of which seem to express Eikha's hopelessness. And I want to show how Yeshayahu develops some of these themes in an opposite manner in his book. Okay, so let's start with Eikha Perek Bet. Eikha Perek Bet is a very difficult perek. It's a very despondent perek. It starts out by describing the actual destruction of Yerushalayim, and the city of Yerushalayim is described over and over as a fallen city, one that has been hurled to the ground by God. In fact, the key word of this chapter, or one of the key words of this chapter, is the word eretz, ground, which appears 7 times, perhaps 8 times in the chapter, depending on what you're understanding about the word eretz. 7 or 8 times in the chapter, this word appears. Look at the very beginning of the chapter. Hishlich mishamayim eretz tiferet Yisrael. God flings the glory of Israel from the heavens to the earth. Pasuk Bet, higia la'aretz. God allows the fortresses of Yehudah to collapse upon the ground. Look in Pasuk Tet. I skipped ahead a little bit. Tavu va'aretz she'areha. Her gates have sunk deep into the ground. And this pasuk here in Pasuk Yud, Yeshvu la'aretz yidmu ziknei Tzion. The elders of Tzion are sitting on the ground in mourning. He'elu afar al rosham. They are putting dust on their heads. Chagru sakim. They are wearing sackcloth. And look at the betulot Yerushalayim. Look at the young maidens of Yerushalayim. Horidu la'aretz roshan. They incline their heads to the ground. This is the description of Yerushalayim's spiraling crash to the ground. Her formerly towering structures and people crash to the ground, where they lie in a crumpled, degraded heap, depleted of their former glory. At the conclusion of this section, we have the elders lying on the ground, sitting on the ground, indicating their mourning, their exhaustion, maybe also their degradation. They rub dust on their heads as an expression of mourning, of humiliation, and perhaps also of their inescapable mortality. Ki afar ata ve'el afar tashuv. We will all return to the dust. And here the elders sit on the ground and they put dust upon their heads. Well, let's look at what Yeshayahu does with this same kind of language. Look at what Yeshayahu says to Yerushalayim in Perek Nun Aleph. Hitorari, hitorari, awaken, awaken, Yerushalayim. Kum Yerushalayim, get up, Yerushalayim. Look at what it says here in the continuation of these psukim in Yeshayahu Nun Bet. Uri, Uri, awaken, awaken. Livshi uzech Tzion. Put on clothes of glory, Tzion. Livshi bigdei tifartech Yerushalayim ir hakodesh. Put on the clothes of glory. You're recognizing maybe some of this language from Lecha Dodi, from the piyut that many of us sing on Friday night. And look at what he says here, Yeshayahu, in Perek Nun Bet, Pasuk Bet. Hit na'ari me'afar kubi shevi Yerushalayim. Shake yourselves up. Get up from the dust, Yerushalayim. So we have here this reversal of the description of Eikha Perek Bet. If in Eikha Perek Bet, Yerushalayim has come crashing to the ground, is rolling in the dust of her degradation, of her humiliation and shame, Yeshayahu tells Yerushalayim to get up, to shake off that dust, and to resume her former clothes of glory. This is a real correction of the book of Eikha, which really leaves us in the dust, but Yeshayahu pulls us out of that dusty situation. Let's look at another example. In Eikha Perek Gimel, we have the description of the Gever, the man, the individual who is suffering his individual suffering. And in the very beginning of the Perek, we have a description of God taking this Gever, or of someone leading the Gever. Rashi identifies that someone as God. He is leading this Gever on twisted, confused, dangerous paths. Look at what we're told here. Ani hagever, I am Gever. Oti nahag vayolach choshech v'lo or. Me he leads, and he takes me on paths of darkness. There is no light. Kadar dirachai bigazit. He builds a wall of stone on my path. Nitivotai iva. He twists my paths. I'm skipping to Yud Aleph. Dirachai sorer vayifashcheni. Samani shomein. God twisted my paths and he mangled me. He placed me desolate. This is Eikha Perek Gimel. This is a terrible description. It's a description which reflects the confusion, the danger, the sense of God's absence. He's plunged in darkness. His paths are twisted. They are filled with animals, with precarious dangers. This reflects both the state of mind of the Gever and the sense that he has that God is not with him. Well, look at what Yeshayahu does when he describes the people returning from Galut. Look at what he says. He uses very similar language as Eikha. He says, V'holachti ivrim b'derech lo yada'u. I will lead blind ones on a path that they do not know. B'netivot lo yadu adrichem. I will guide them on paths that they are not familiar with. Asim machshach lifnehem laor uma'akashim lemishor. I will make those dark places light, and those twisted places I will make straight. Eile hadvarim asitim velo azavtim. Right? These are the things that God does. God does not forsake his people on these dark, twisty paths. Rather, he brings them back from the exile under the opposite conditions in which they went to exile. He brings them back in light. He brings them back on straight paths, and he brings them back himself in a way that makes them feel protected and filled with trust. This is the reversal of Eikha. Let's go on to Perek Daled in Eikha. And, at the very least, we're encountering many psukim here of Eikha. We're getting a sense of Eikha. And Perek Daled in Eikha, I think, is really the worst Perek. Perek Bet was a difficult Perek, but Perek Daled has an even more protracted description of the starvation of the mothers eating the children. It's really a terrible Perek. And the Perek opens as follows. Eikha yu'am zahav, yishne haketem hatov. How has the gold become dimmed? The good gold has changed. Tishtapechna avnei kodesh, birosh kol chutzot. All of those precious stones, all of those jewels have spilled out onto the streets. What are these jewels that are spilling out onto the streets? What is this gold that is worthless? Well, first of all, I think we'll note that in a time of famine, gold and jewels are simply worthless, right? Why do you want gold and jewels if you can't buy bread in the city? And so they're just sort of, spilled on the street corners. At the same time, what we seem to be describing are the precious materials of the Mikdash, of the temple. During the destruction, the prosperity of the temple seems to just sort of spill out into the streets. But a third level of understanding is that these jewels and gold are a metaphor for the children of Yerushalayim. And that's pretty much what Eikha seems to say in the next pasuk. B'nei Tzion hayikarim, precious children of Zion, hamisulaim bapaz, that were once valued like gold. Eikha nechshavu lenivlei cheres, ma'aseh yedei yotzer. They are now thought of as no better than an earthenware pot. Now, these jewels come up again later on in Perek Daled when we describe the way Yerushalayim used to look. It used to look very regal. It was filled with regal people whose limbs were like pearls, sapir gizratam. Their limbs looked like sapphires. It's a very beautiful, majestic, and regal description. It's all been lost in the famine of Yerushalayim. Well, let's turn to Yeshayahu. When Yeshayahu rebuilds Yerushalayim, when he describes the rebuilding of Yerushalayim in Perek Nun Daled, look at what he says. He says, Aniyah soara lo nuchama, right? You who have not been comforted. Hinanochi marbitz bapuch avanaich, v'yisadtich basapirim. I am now going to color your stones with bright blue, and I am going to place sapphires in your foundations. V'chol gvulaich le'avnei chefetz. All of your borders will be surrounded by jewels. V'chol banaich limudei Hashem, v'rav shalom banaich. Right, and the continuation of the jewels here is the description of the children in the city who are learning Torah, who are disciples of God, right? It is the restoration of a gleaming, glittery, prosperous city whose real jewels, whose real gold are the children in the city. It is the reversal of Eikha, Perek Daled. Well, I could go on, but we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to skip ahead to we're going to do one more example, and then I'm going to conclude with the final pasuk in Eikha. My next example is actually a very broad theme in Megillat Eikha, and that is the theme of eyes. Einayim, eyes. The word ayin, eye, appears 10 times in the book of Eikha. It is a very important word. And yet, what is striking about the use of this word is that only once in Eikha is the word used for sight. And then it is, of course, that they do not have sight, right? Odena tichlena einenu havel, odena tichlena einenu el azratenu havel, right? We are looking in vain for any sort of help. The other 9 times that the word eyes are referred to, it has to do with shedding tears. The main job of the eye in Megillat Eikha is the shedding of tears. Look at what we have here. For example, in Perek Aleph, Al Eile Ani Bochia, Eini Yorda Mayim Kirachak Mimeni Minachem. About these things I cry. My eyes, they flow with water because a comforter is far from me. Look, for example, in Perek Hey, in our final Perek of Eikha, Al Ze Haya Dave Libenu. Al Eile Chashchu Einenu. About this thing was our heart sick, was our heart anguished. About these things, our eyes darkened, and it seems to be darkened with tears. Well, Yerushalayim's eyes in the book of Eikha are a symbol of her mourning, her misery, her hopelessness. She can only see tears. She cannot see a hopeful future. Look at Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu, in an attempt to rouse Yerushalayim and prepare her for her upcoming redemption, Yeshayahu turns to Yerushalayim and says, Se'i saviv einayich ure'i kulam nikbitzu vaulach chayani me'um Hashem. Right? Lift up your eyes and see. Everybody is coming. They are gathering together. They're coming. They're going to be dressed in regal clothes, in the clothes of a bride. Look at what Yeshayahu says, something similar in Perek Samech. Se'i saviv einayich, again addressing Yerushalayim. Lift up your eyes, uri, and see. Everybody is coming. Az tir'i, then you will see. V'nahart ufachad v'rachav levavech. Your heart will widen instead of davel libenu. Instead of the heart contracting from anguish, your heart will widen. The prophecies of Yeshayahu, I hope that I've made this point. I hope I've made a convincing point. The prophecies of Yeshayahu are a response to Eikha. The two books are in dialogue. They are interacting with each other. They are conversing with each other. And in this context, Yeshayahu provides comfort for Eikha's hopeless situation. Now, I'll end with one final point, and then I hope I'll have time to go and look at some of the questions. And that is that one thing that I think makes Eikha a particularly hopeless book, a particularly difficult book, is that it seems to have lost hope in tefillah. God is distant. There is a sense of hester panim. God is hiding his face. And Eikha seems to maintain an abiding, enduring sense of God's distance and perhaps, God forbid, the inefficacy of tefillah. We have several indications of this. I didn't bring through these psukim, but in Eikha Perek Gimel, for example, the Gever says, Gam ki ezak va'ashavea satam tefilati. Even when I cry out and I plead, my tefillah is blocked. Sakota ve'anan lach me'avor tefillah. You have covered yourself with a cloud. You do not allow tefillah to penetrate. And this is a real problem. If we don't believe that tefillah can penetrate, so what hopes do we have of getting back our hope in God? And in fact, that's one of the reasons I think that Eikha ends with a note of despondency. Ki im ma'os me'astanu, katsafta aleinu ad me'od. You have rejected us. You are angry at us. Look at what Yeshayahu does. Yeshayahu acknowledges, Hey nata katsafta. Indeed, God, you have been angry. And he goes on, he says, Ve'ein koreh b'shimcha. There's no one who calls in your name. Mitorer la'chazik bach. There's no one that awakens to grab onto you. Ki histarta fanecha mimeni. Because you have hidden your face from us. Ve'ata Hashem avinu ata. But now, God, you are our Father, Yeshayahu says. Ata chomer, ata yotzreinu. You are the one who created us. And therefore, I will call on your name. I will turn to you with tefillah. And what does he say? Al tiktsof Hashem ad me'od. Do not be exceedingly wrathful with us. Remember how Eikha ended. Katsafta aleinu ad me'od. Eikha ended by saying, you have been exceedingly angry with us. And Yeshayahu dares to say, Al tiksof Hashem ad me'od. I think that once you see Eikha within its wider Tanach context, you can actually see that Eikha does not leave us hopeless at all. The calamity of Eikha will be rectified. That is what Yeshayahu promises us. Tefillah will return, Yehudah will return, the children will return, rebuild the city, reassume the glory of Yerushalayim, and biblical history continues, illustrating Am Yisrael's remarkable fortitude and reaffirming God's ongoing love for his people. That's what we learn from the conversation between Eikha and Yeshayahu. I'm very sorry. I do not think that I had a chance to get to your questions, and I have to now let the next person give their shiur. If anybody wants to email me with questions or to get the source sheet, yaelziegler@gmail.com. I wish all of you a meaningful fast, and may we all meet in person on Tisha B'Av with the coming of Mashiach here in Yerushalayim, and Be'ezrat Hashem with the cessation of this pandemic, with some sort of resolution to all of our troubles.